Hello everyone, and thank you for joining. So today I'm going to be going through how to build an accordion in Storyline, and we're going to look at the considerations for accessibility on this as well. Now I haven't got some of the accessibility set up on this one yet, so we're going to kind of work through it as I do it, and I'll talk through kind of where I'm coming from with it as well. I tested some parts of it, but I haven't completed it fully, so we might see me make some mistakes through this, we might not, who knows. Let's see how we get along. Now I'm usually doing these videos in my work shirts and such, but because I work from home quite a lot, I like to have my own little schedule on these videos. In my work week, you know, I'll wear shirts whilst I'm working at my desk and stuff to make me feel like the change and such, but I still also do my own little dress down Friday thing at home as well, so that's why we've got the hoodie on, a bit more relaxed clothing today. So shall we dive in? I reckon we're just about ready to, so let's see where we can get at with this one. So this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be building accordions in this video, so I'll just show you the demonstration that we put on LinkedIn as the little kind of teaser, and this is what we're going to replicate. So I've built this already, but we'll do it again. So it's there's not like a pre-built one of these in Storyline, so I'm just going to show you how I've done mine. And always great to hear your thoughts as well. The good thing about the beauty about Storyline is there's lots of different ways that you can build this stuff. You might not like my method, you might have your own. Please do feel free to share if you do so, but hopefully you'll like mine. So it just like kind of, this one here is a kind of vertical accordion. You'll see these horizontally work as well. The programming that we're going to put in place here can work across, you know, any type of accordion that you want to build. They all kind of work in the same way, which is where you tap a button and it kind of expands into some content within it. So it helps you with spacing on your slides if you've got quite a bit to talk about on that slide, and also just gives a bit of interactivity in there as well. So let's have a look what we've got here. So I'm just going to copy this slide, and we'll get rid of a load of the stuff that we've already done, and we will paste those into our new slide and talk through what we're doing whilst we get along with that. So let's get rid of my layers as well, and we are just about ready there. So I'm just going to move my camera. We'll go top left. I think we should be fine up here, just so I'm not getting in the way of my layers, because we'll need to go through those. Okay, so for a start, we've just got a kind of a plain slide look here. So let's get our accordion buttons in first, which are these ones that I've built here. So I'm just going to copy those and paste them into here. So we've got 3 buttons ready to go. Get rid of all of the triggers on these at the moment, because we're going to re-go those so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And you'll see that we've got 3 motion paths in here already as well. We'll get rid of those. This one doesn't have a motion path because it's got nothing that expands past it, of course, because this one has a motion path because sorry, this one here, no. Is it that one that doesn't have a Hey, let's make it, and we'll find out as we get along, won't we? Okie dokie. So we've got an accordion here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a background that's going to appear as the accordion expands. So I've got an accordion back on my timeline here, and then I've got accordion back out. So you don't have to do both of these. You can do the trick with pausing the timeline as well, but I'm not often a fan of pausing timelines when I can have a different method, just because it can sometimes, if there's other stuff that needs to specifically move along at a particular pace or anything, then you're kind of tied into that, and you might and bugs might appear. So I usually like to not pause the timeline when I don't have to. So I'm going to grab my accordion back and then accordion back out here. And they are just sitting like kind of, so these are just going to cover the space of where the accordions can come out. So I'm going to put my accordions above them. Those there. And then both of these are hidden at the moment. So hidden, and so they're not appearing on the screen at the moment because we only want those to appear when the accordion is actually expanded. So accordion 1 is the one that doesn't have any motion path, because accordion 1 would never move because it never needs to expand out anywhere. So 2 and 3 have got a motion path. So those just kind of sit alongside each other. So they'll be the same length of motion path, if you imagine. So let's just have a look. We can see that that's 450 pixels. And that one is 450 pixels as well. So let's do those first. So add a motion path line. And then we will going right, I think, or are we going left? We're going right. Lovely. So we'll go 450 pixels as the length. So you can obviously move these motion paths with your keyboard if you want, etc. Holding control, or you can 10 pixels and stuff. But if you, I usually like to just play around with the length of the motion path at the top, because you can kind of see it shift around as you're going. So that's what I'm going to do there, and we're going to call this Ac1 out. Now let's go Ac1 expand. That'll do. And then we need to do the same. It's not Ac1. It's Ac3. Yeah. It's automatically creates the motion path that starts when the timeline of it starts. So we're just going to get rid of that because we don't want it to do that. And then we'll have a look at number 2. We're going to do exactly the same thing. So we could use the animation painter. But we'll do the same again. So we're going to go right 450. So those should now, so we'll get rid of that one as well. We don't want a motion path on that. So those are going to expand out quite nicely for the space that I need for my accordion. Now I did like the animation on these, so it looks like we've gone for a 1 second animation. So the duration's 1 second. Oh no, this is in. So that's the one that's coming in that. So 2 seconds for out, 1 second for in. Left everything else by default. So actually it's a completely default motion path that. So expand, expand. So we now know that these two are able to expand out when we need them to, which is part of the flow of this accordion. And we're going to need both of them to do that when our first button is activated, when our first accordion is expanded. So I can see that we do have both those motion paths on there. So let's do this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a layer which triggers anything that's going to happen as this button is expanded. Ac1 expand. So we'll call it Ac1 expand. So first thing we want to add in is I'm going to move Act 3.1 along expand when the timeline starts on this layer. That's fine. Copy and paste that. Act 2 expand when the timeline starts on this layer as well. We don't want this layer to do anything like hiding other layers because it's just triggering stuff. Actually, I think we'll be okay with this one. Let's check what I did last time. It's a good thing we're building it already. It's like, here's what I did earlier. Yeah, we're okay. We'll leave that on there then. That's absolutely fine. Okay, and then just add a trigger onto this button now. Where it's going to show layer accordion expand when the user clicks accordion 1. So far so good. So now we've got our two buttons moving out of the way when we've hit this. Okay. So first test passed. So I've got an expanded state for each of these. Custom state where it's expanded. And obviously as the accordion is pressed, want it to go to this expanded state. Now you could probably, in all honesty, just thinking about it now, in fact let's give it a go. So I'm going to duplicate that and turn it into a selected state instead, and then I'm going to do the same on my other buttons. Because they will switch automatically to it. Now, the one thing I can't remember is whether I had some special triggers basing on the expanded state not kicking in immediately. So this is quite exciting if we've messed this up. So these have now got a selected state, and I want it to be aware that all three buttons work together, so we only need one of them to be selected at any one time. So I'm going to select all of the buttons and I'm going to turn them into a button set. So even though I haven't got the triggers ready for the others, this should still, yeah, and it's deselecting the other one, so should hopefully work quite nicely this, but we'll soon find out, won't we? Okay, so we've got our motion paths of our accordion expanding. Now we want our background to present, so accordion background, but I don't think we want it to present immediately because we need to give it time to get out. So I use cue points for this type of thing, as you'll be aware of if you've watched any of my previous videos. And as you'll see on this layer, all that we've got are triggers and just the text that appears from within the accordion. So, and that text comes in after everything is expanded out. So yeah, it's about, we've got a second and a half in there, and it turns it to normal when the cue point hits that. So yes, we're letting it kind of consider when to jump in. So we'll put a cue point there, and then we'll grab our text from accordion 1, I'm sure you know how to make a text box. You don't need me to show you how to do that. So because my player head was at the cue point, it's dropped it in there, which is very nice. We're going to change the state of Accordion 1 back to normal when the timeline reaches cue point 1. And this now should be our first accordion built. Perfect. So there we go. We've got it expanded now. We've done our first accordion expanding, which is good stuff. Keep yourself hydrated. So now we need the buttons to go back in. We need to make a consideration for when the accordion closes. So we'll do accordion 1 collapsing now. So I'm using expand, collapse because they're the phrases that you generally use for accordions, and it's what screen readers will say as well, which is when we get onto the exciting accessibility stuff as well. So these need to go back in, these accordions. So I'm going to duplicate the pathway. I'm going to call it collapse. Looks like we went for 1 second for collapsing, and we're reversing the pathway. That should be all that we need to do. And we'll just do the same for this one here. So copy, paste, collapse, 1 second, and reverse pathway. There we go. So they've both got an expand and a collapse now. And it doesn't look like it's tried to make a new timeline trigger for me, which is good. So I think we're all good. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create all of the kind of expansion layers first. So this is going to do the same thing as this. So we can copy and paste that. Accordion 2 expand, but this one only needs to push out number 3. So we can get rid of that one. So it's not moving itself, but it is still moving that. And then our text will be flush with this one instead. Just so you're not seeing me type away, let's just copy that, paste it in there. And let's add the trigger in. That's going to show layer Accordion 2 expand. Let's just give that a test as well. Wonderful. So last but not least, we are going to be adding more triggers to these because it gets complicated when you when you've got one open already and then you want to open another one without closing one first. When they're closed, it's all very easy. It just can hit this layer that's like expand it. But when you start to get them to work like an accordion where one opens, one closes, just from a single click, from clicking on like I want to now look at accordion 3, you imagine you'll need to get it to like trigger a close layer and then trigger an expand layer as well. It gets a bit more complicated. So these layers will fill up with a few more variables, but we're just taking this one step at a time. So we've got so we can go through it nice at a good pace. So this one doesn't need to wait for anything to close. So we should be able to bring in the text much quicker on this one, if I remember rightly. Yeah, so I've got it coming in at 0.50 with my timeline at 0.20 there. So we'll get that at 0.50. Just like that. How about that? Okay, that's just about fine there. So Accordion 1 back to normal when the timeline reaches Q.1. So Accordion 3 should be ready to expand now. Those were frustrating me. I'm a big previewer. I like to preview stuff. I've got 2 drinks on the go as well. Got a cup of tea as well. That's going a bit cold. Whoops. Didn't move my my text, did I? We'll do that now. Hey, this is why you preview. Wonderful. So we're all good now. Everything's expanding as we want it to, but nothing is ready to collapse yet. So let's start to think about how we want stuff to collapse. So as you can see, the timeline's getting a little busier on the collapse ones. Okay, so let's replicate Accordion 1 collapse. So first thing we need Accordion 1 to do is we're going to move the 2 buttons along the collapsing timelines. Animation paths. When the timeline starts, and then Accordion 2 the same. Okay, but how do we get the collapse layer to trigger? Now that's the question, isn't it? So this is where we're going to start using a variable to track what's open at the moment, like which accordion's open, if any is open, and the buttons will start kind of responding based on that. So let's make our variable so I'll call it Accordion demo. So we've already got my old Accordion 1 on my test file, but I do want us to build this as we're going. So we'll call this one Accordion demo, and we're doing it as a number variable, this one, because we need more than true and false. It's not just this or that. Okay, so Accordion is going to be at 1 when button 1 is pressed. So I believe, but only when it's pressed at normal. So if I remember rightly, we'll double check on this one here. I think we get the accordion variable to change to 1 when the button is pressed if the state is normal. And it's the last thing it does. Oh no, it's if the variable isn't already 1. That's even better. So we are going to adjust variable. We're going to set accordion demo to value 1 when this button is clicked if accordion demo is not already 1. So we only want it to set to 1 when it's not yet 1. Okay. So now we need it to trigger collapse if it's already 1, if it's already open. I think. Yep. So we're going to add another trigger onto our button here, which is going to show a layer. It's going to show accordion 1 collapse when the user clicks accordion 1 if accordion demo is 1. Very important. This trigger must be before the setting of accordion demo to 1, or it's going to set it to 1 before it thinks about, do I need to collapse yet? So let's see what happens. It's not going to look quite right yet because we haven't got a lot of other stuff going on, but we'll at least have our buttons coming in now, I would have thought. So there it is expanding. That one's the wrong pathway by the looks of it. It is. It's expand. There we go. Let's try that again. Wonderful. And it's now actually I had a trick on my other one for fading out the text, which I haven't put in yet, but it seemed to look all right. It will just disappear. Yeah, it disappears immediately. We can get that to look a bit nicer. So I'm going to put my text on here as well with no fade in. And we're getting everything to come out quicker. So we'll get it to 0.25 seconds out. And then we need our background to hide as well. So here's why I've done both backgrounds now. So first things first is I'm going to change the state of background to hidden when the timeline starts on this layer. So that's going to hide. But this background doesn't have an exit animation. So the reason it doesn't have an exit animation, this is why I was talking about the timelines, is because if I've got an exit animation on it, it always kicks in when the timeline gets to an end. You can't stop it from doing that exit animation without a pause timeline variable, and I didn't want to do it that way. So I'm just getting it to hide it rapidly. Which is fine, but I don't like stuff just like disappearing off the screen like that. So that's why I've got my other one, which is going to set it to normal, but then immediately set it back to hidden to present a fade out animation that the standard one that's just sat there all the time can't do. So let's see how we're doing. Fade in nicely. Wonderful. We've got accordion 1 working. Okay. So accordion 1 is now ready, expanded and collapsed. We're going to have to put more triggers on here because of as other buttons are pressed, but it at least now happens that when we press button, when we do just the straightforward, I'm going to open and close this. It's now working as expected. So we're going to do the same for accordion 2. Which doesn't need to move accordion 2, it only needs to move accordion 3 along collapse. It still needs to get do all of the background trickery. And we don't need that one. Actually, if I leave that there. No. Not going to leave that there actually. And then get rid of that fade. Put that fade in for 0.25. And then that is just about ready as well. So let's now, so we want set accordion demo. We're going to copy that trigger and add it to here. I'm going to change it to value 2. And then we're going to show layer collapse before that. Super essential that we're going to do it before. If it already equals value 2. So hopefully we should have 2 buttons now that work on a click in, click out. Sorry that you're hearing me gulp. But I have finished it now, so don't worry, it's not going to happen again. Oh, not quite. Wrong layer. I didn't change the layer, did I? Oh, if you were looking at the camera going, Ewan, you haven't changed the layer, then well done for spotting something that I didn't. This is why I preview so much. We're only human, aren't we? We make mistakes. Best thing is to recognize them and spot them and test them. So lovely jubbly. That's kind of now working, but obviously it's very buggy when we start to click on them both. So that bit of it doesn't work yet, but I can at least open, close, open, close. Or maybe not. We've got a bug. Just noticed. Can I get rid of that on my hover? So I don't like the way it goes back to that. I think it's duplicated that icon in that state when I've copied the buttons over, which now I mention it, I do remember it doing that previously. There we go, missed that as well. So that is probably why it wasn't working. Not happy with that now. Yeah. I did like those there for some reason. Okay. my hover states back now. Yeah, they are duplicating other ones over the top of it, which is frustrating. So if you look at my other one, I'm not going to fix those now because that's not the aim of this video. But if we have a look at my originals, it's only that one that's doing it. Looks a bit smoother, doesn't it? And I do remember that's why I use the expanded state as well, so to do the funky little twirl instead of going straight to the selected state. So there we go. There was method in my madness after all, but that's fine. All we're doing here really is we're wanting to get the functionality right. So let's just get that looking correct. Okay, lovely. And then same again for number 3. But this doesn't need to get rid of anything again. Just need to show that stuff, hide that stuff, sorry. Hide my text. And then let's keep track of all of my variables and stuff this time. So show layer accordion 3 collapse when it equals 3. And set accordion demo to 3 if it's not equal to 3. I think got them all. Lovely. Okay, so we're getting there. We've got, so we work now on expand and collapse on the button. As we're pressing that button, it correctly opens and closes based on these variables here. So now we need to consider that another button might be pressed whilst one is already expanded. So let's have a look at, so it's going to display, it's going to show layer expand if accordion is at 0, so nothing is expanded, so we're going to have something that turns it back to 0 as well. It shows collapse if it's at 1, it shows accordion 2 collapse if it's at 2, it shows accordion 3 collapse if it's at 3. So it's showing that, so depending on where we're already at the moment, so if I've got accordion 2 open, that's going to be at 2, and then when I click this one here and it recognizes, oh, I'm at 2, so 2's open, it shows 2 collapsing before it does anything else. So let's replicate that functionality. So for a start, let's get a condition on here where it shows this only if accordion is at 0. So accordion 1 collapse, accordion 2 collapse if at 2, accordion 3 collapse if at 3. Okay, so let's see what else we've got going on our collapses now. So move those along there. We know all that. We've done all of these things here already. This is a bit of accessibility, so we'll be going through that at the end of the video. So set state of accordion 1 to normal when the timeline ends on this layer. We don't need to do that anymore because we've got them as button groups on this one. But if you're wanting to have a play around like I have with my states, like getting a bit fancy, you'll need to add that in again. And it's going to show accordion layer 2 expanded if I click on that. So let's just have a look at that. Okay, let's have a look. And then this is what sets it back to 0 on our collapses. So let's do that first. So adjust variable, set accordion demo to 0 when timeline ends on this layer. So we'll do that on each of them. So these are displaying. So if this accordion 1 collapse kicks in, but the variable is actually on 2 or 3, as in button 2 or 3 has been pressed, then it triggers the other layer going. So let's get it to do that. And those happen before it changes it to value 0. Only if it's at 1 at the moment though. So it won't change it to value 0 if the reason it's doing this is from one of the other buttons being pressed. So let's just alter that. So it's only going to do this if accordion demo is at 1. We're going to show layer accordion 2 expand when the timeline ends on this layer if accordion demo equals 2. Get that to happen first, and then same again, accordion 3 expand if it's at 3. Set it back to 0 if it's at 1, so it's ready to know that everything is closed again. So let me just check that is what we've got going on here. Yeah. So let's okay, so we're going to grab both of those and pop them in here as well. First we need to add our condition onto here. So we're on accordion 2 now, so this is only going to set it to 0 if it's at 2. It's going to show layer accordion 1 expand if on 1. Show layer accordion 3 expand if on 3. As expected. So let's copy those again. Get rid of that one because this one's got my condition ready. That's fine. This one needs to change to 2. And this one needs to change to 3. And then all of our buttons now need to recognize whether they are showing an expand or a collapse. So this one's all ready. So now accordion 2. So it only shows 2 if accordion demo is at 0. So it's been pressed when everything's closed. It shows that when at 2, which is fine. Shows accordion 1 collapse if at 1. Is that right? We double check from the one that we've done. Yep, it's all collapses. Only expand. So show accordion 3 collapse if at 3. 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3, and then set accordion. So this is where it gets a bit complicated, because we've got a variable that's telling us which layer is currently open, and if it's more complicated than I'm just going to open and close, then which layer do I need to show to close that one before I open my next one? That's what we're doing here with this variable. So we're just going to show all the collapses again. So accordion 1 collapse if at 1. Accordion 2 collapse if at 2. Accordion 3 collapse if at 3. Set to 3. And then this one is show layer accordion 3 expand if demo is at 0. And then that is setting it back to 0. That's setting it back to 0. That's setting it back to 0. Okay, have we done everything? One way to find out, we test it. And then if it hasn't, then we look back at my other one and find out what we've missed. Almost there, I think. There's something not quite right on... So that's fine. Something not quite right on that to that. So I want to say it's this closing. So let's get, I'm just going to pop a text box in here. And then we'll just insert a reference. Double check that those are where they're supposed to be. It's definitely setting it to 2. So I feel like something not quite right on this one here. So why is it not quite working? So let me just do that and close that. I don't think it's got enough time to close it before it's moving it on its other track. That's what is wrong, I believe. It is exactly what's wrong. I've got bigger timelines here. Okay, so they need to be about 0.75. That's the issue. That is not showing until end. I know some people like to get all of this stuff perfect as they're doing these videos, but I prefer to kind of show what it looks like really, so we can all work it out together. It gives you a closer idea of seeing different workings of it then as well. Still not quite right. So that one was trying to move out before. Oh, there we go. I don't believe it. Wrong variable reference there. Is that it? Is that all that's... That's probably what's causing the problem. There we go. Lovely. So everything now works as we'd like it to. It's recognizing what's open and closed, and it does a collapse if it needs to before expanding the next one. So this is how you can build an accordion. Don't reference the wrong variables like I do. That's going to mess things up a little. And if you want to play around with like kind of a funky arrow animation like I have done on my one, you might just want to add a bit of trickery where it uses a custom state, where it uses a custom state and sets the custom state as part of the timeline, so it triggers like an animation in there as well. That's how this one's working with that. Okay, so now let's have a think about the accessibility of this slide. So accordions generally announce themselves as expanded or collapsed on for screen readers. So we're going to have a little play around with that. And the animation, as you can see, text coming in slowly is going to mess up with a screen reader a little bit because they'll probably miss the text. So we're going to have a play around with that as well, which is a bit like a trick that we've already used. So let's get in a bit with the accessibility to start off with. So at the moment, these have not got labels. They're just recognized as rectangles. So we're going to give them accessible names. If you're being if you don't want it to be immediately recognize what's behind the button, alt text, it's an entirely different conversation. We won't get too much into it, but we need to give these alt text so they're recognized as kind of accordion buttons. Now, the way I'm going to do this for accessibility purposes, and just to help maintain better, is I'm going to use variables for the buttons of these. So we're going to have Ac1 name, which will be a text variable. We're going to copy and paste that. Ac3 name. Okay, and then so first thing we're going to do is these are currently collapsed. So we are going to reference the variable in here. So let's just grab and then we're going to put collapsed as part of the alt text. I'm going to do the same with this one, Act 2, and do the same with this one, Act 3. Okay, and then I'm going to edit the state. So the selected state is how this looks when it's expanded. So we're going to change the back end of the text to expanded. Do the same with this. So this is the bit that I didn't experiment with before we started this video. So we've had some bumps along the road and we might have some more coming. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the variable, and the timeline starts on this layer. So we're going to call this one phone icon. We're going to change act name 2 to talking icon. We can change act name 3 to webcam icon, because that's what we're seeing as well. So I want them to be labeled in a similar way to what we're seeing on here. So this should hopefully cover the button responding as we'd expect to on a screen reader. It's going to read out as we need it to. So that's going to be the first part of our accessibility. Now the next part is the slow animation. So we need to deal with this slow animation. So we're going to use the same trick that we've done in a previous video, which is where when we've got animation off, it's going to skip to a cue point on the slide. So on these ones, it's going to skip to here straight away. So it shows the text immediately. And the collapse ones, we're going to get these to basically instigate the timeline to just rapidly happen, basically. I think this is the trick that, oops, don't do that. Same again. There we go. Okay, right, let's give this a test. So I'll turn our screen reader on. I'm not going to do the animation test yet.
Taskbar. Next button. Ribbon property page. Exit and X.
Okay, so let's just get the focus order right. Super important. So we want these buttons to come in first. So heading, these three buttons, and then let's have a look. Expand one. So there's this is going to go there. That's going to go under there. So that presents after that's pressed. That's the wrong one. That needs to be there. That's going to go there. Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna fix these. So next, previous, menu stuff, and then animation on button. That's fine. And then you'll remember that I did a little visual trick just to make these hide, but we definitely don't want the text being read out twice. So we're going to make these invisible to a screen reader because they are there solely for animation purposes. So we don't want them to be in our focus order. So let's go for this again. So I'm not going to test the animation of it just yet.
X main form. Phone icon. Collapsed button.
There we go. So it's said the variable name and it said collapsed. So we know that the
Talking icon, collapsed button.
So we know that the accordion's collapsed.
Phone icon, collapsed button. Phone icon, expanded.
Perfect. Exactly how.
Heading level 3 phones. Phones are good to use as communication devices.
So this is how accordions respond online when they've been built correctly as well. They'll say expanded, collapse from the different states.
Talking icon, collapsed button. Talking icon, expanded. Conversation. Face-to-face chatting can help get an issue resolved quicker as there is fewer issues of ambiguity. Button.
Okay. But what will if I just start trying to read immediately?
Button next. Button next. FaceTime in.
So let's refresh the slide.
Replay. Preview.
I'm going to turn animation off.
Top bar. Main landmark phone icon. Heading level 3 phones. Phones are good to use as talking icon. Conversation. Exit. Main.
So there we go. We're getting the text immediately so it might not look the most attractive method for it, but it still gives the screen reader the best experience where that text is presented on page immediately. You could do a bit more work around this where you could add another motion path which is on instant. So there's absolutely the buttons just scan from either way to remove that animation entirely. But this method here, at least it just makes sure that text is on the page immediately, and the button announces whether it's collapsed or expanded, so you know what state the accordion button is in. So if you are confused at all of why I've used variables for these button names here, the reason is because as soon as I type in something here and have collapsed, it then means that I have to maintain the selected state as well, because it's a different alt text. So if I just change this alt text to phone icon, then it's different to the alt text of the selector. So it means that if I reuse this button if I reuse this button and change the icon in there, use different wording. I would do this with text labels as well. If you're just having a text label on your accordion, I would use a variable, because it's much easier to maintain. Because if you imagine, if I copy and paste this button now, all I have to do is, look, just for purpose, let's change this to a river picture. And then if we test it again,
Taskbar, running lower ribbon, preview doc, frame clickable main landmark river picture, collapsed button.
There we go.
River picture, expanded.
So I haven't had to go in and change that selected state phrasing, because I've just got a variable that can control that instead. So that's why I do that. So we got there and it did work in the end. So thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you found that useful in learning a bit about accordions and how you can build them in Storyline, and also considering the accessibility of those. If you've got any comments or thoughts, then please do share away, as I'm always more than happy to chat through any of these videos. Or if there's anything else that you want to see, then let me know. If you've enjoyed this, as usual, all the good stuff of liking, subscribing, commenting, and I'll make sure I'll be sharing more tips and tricks at a later date. So thank you ever so much.